Hey, here are 5 stupid things I've noticed about Santa Claus. He utilizes slave labor. Santa is one of those concepts that for many of us conjures up warm feelings associated with being children. It's not until after we're grown up and able to reflect on it from a distance that we become aware of some of the more disconcerting aspects of it. Like, for example, Santa's elves are a slave labor force. I mean, what else would you call them? Does Santa pay them? Are they allowed to come and go as they please? Is their presence at the North Pole strictly voluntary? It never really seemed that way to me. I mean, where did Santa get all those elves from anyway? Where did they come from? Did he conquer their elf village and abduct them or something? What's the suicide rate among the elf population up there at Foxconn North? He practices religious discrimination. When I was a kid, the first crack in my belief in Santa Claus was when I realized how incredible it is that he supposedly visits the home of every child on the planet in a single night. The first explanation that I was offered for this was that Santa's magic, but I smelled bullshit off that by the time I was 6. And then eventually at some point, some adult, my mom or an uncle or an aunt, told me that it's really not as incredible as it sounds because Santa doesn't have to visit every single child on Earth, just children whose parents have religious beliefs that make room for Santa Claus. And for whatever reason, the children of Jewish families were always singled out as an example of this, though I presume that children of Muslim parents and Hindu parents and atheist parents, among many others, were just as ignored. And when you think about it, this makes Santa seem like even more of a dick than he already seems like because he operates a slave plantation above the Arctic Circle. Sorry, kids, but your parents are members of the wrong religion, so no presents for you. So much for the spirit of giving, I guess. Although, to be fair, Santa isn't nearly as bad in this regard as some people I could name. He exacts tribute from those he visits. There's an element of soft coercion involved in the tradition of leaving milk and cookies out on Christmas Eve for Santa Claus, isn't there? I mean, sure, maybe it originated as just a nice gesture that a few families took it upon themselves to do for Santa to show their appreciation for the presents, but once the man in the red fur suit got a taste for it, he saw to it that it caught on with everyone. As a child, I certainly have the impression that leaving out milk and cookies for Santa was strictly voluntary. It seemed to me like a part of the deal. Santa breaks into our house and gives us presents, and in return, we give him some milk and cookies. And what happens if Santa shows up at your house and doesn't find a glass of milk and a plate of cookies waiting for him on the kitchen table? I don't know if anyone has ever tried to find out. Anyone alive, that is. He makes promises others will be expected to keep. Okay, so the first 3 things on this list are based on viewing Santa from the inside, as it were. They require the assumption that Santa really exists. But of course, as we all know, sorry kids, Santa doesn't really exist. So when a mom or a dad brings their little daughter or son to the mall to sit on Santa's lap and Santa promises them a new bike or doll or Xbox under the Christmas tree, it's up to mom or dad to fill that order, not Santa. And granted, they do kind of bring it on themselves by allowing the kid to talk to Santa Claus in the first place. But even so, isn't it amazing that even non-existent Santa manages to come off as a huge dick? I mean, not as big of a dick as most of the adults in my culture, because here's the last and the stupidest and the worst thing, really, about Santa Claus. He's a massive, ongoing, pointless prank on the children of the world. Santa doesn't actually exist, and pretty much everybody over the age of 10 knows it, and yet there are millions of people all over the world, people between the ages of 0 and 9 mostly, who very, very sincerely believe that he does exist. Why do they believe this? because pretty much every adult in their lives, parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles, older siblings, babysitters, have told them that Santa does exist. All of the people in their lives that they turn to for authority, for answers to their questions, as role models, as sources of wisdom and truth, have been lying to them for their entire lives and telling them something that is not true. You know, there's a very obvious parallel to be drawn, and one that is often drawn by atheists such as myself, between belief in Santa Claus and belief in God. But making that comparison only serves to underline the absurdity and futility of belief in Santa Claus. Because unlike belief in God, the people promoting belief in Santa Claus don't even believe it themselves. And we all know that inevitably the children we're telling about Santa will grow up and realize that we've all been lying to their faces for all these years. It's one of the most bizarre, pointlessly sadistic rituals in our culture to knowingly inculcate a false belief in children who don't know any better just so we can see them disillusioned of it years later. You know, when you think about it that way, it's really no wonder that Santa is such a prick. He comes by it honestly. He inherited it from his creators. The hardest part is only picking five. Catch you next time.